Next up is our discussion calendar, which is agenda item number 10. Item number 10 is discussion and possible approval of the draft rate resolutions introduced at the August 31st meeting. That is to make changes to our rates, rules, and regulations. 10A was CEO and General Manager's report, a recommendation of rates and services volumes 1 and 2 that was dated from June 17th. Which had two parts. So the second part is 10B. Again, the CEO and General Manager's report and recommendation on open access tariff that was dated June 17th. We will have our presenter, Alcides Hernandez, who is the Manager of Revenue and Strategy.
Thank you, President Thompson. Good evening, SMUD Board of Directors. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you a recap of the 2021 rate action and rate recommendations before the board votes on the 3 rate resolutions that were introduced at the August 31st, 2021 public hearing. The next slide, please. Thank you. As you can see in this slide, this is an overview of this 2021 rate action. The public hearing on August 31st was preceded by an extensive public outreach process that included 2 public workshops, 3 public presentations, 50+ meetings with community organizations, outreach over 1,555 community and business leaders, and an extensive 2-year journey of collaboration with solar industry. We thank everyone who has helped us collaboratively develop the rate proposal that we have before you. With their inputs, we have a solution that supports the solar and storage industry through a measured but necessary transition. And it's also fair to all our customers and helps support decarbonization and resilient power supply for the Sacramento region. The next slide, please. Here is a summary of the proposed rate changes. In all the prior public meetings, we have provided a lot of details. So right now we are providing a high-level overview of those recommendations. First, we are proposing 2 rate increases, a 1.5% rate increase effective March 1st of 2022, and a 2% effective January 1st of 2023. This applies to all our customers. Second, a new solar and storage rate effective January 1st of 2022 for all solar and storage customers approved for interconnection or on or after January 1st of 2022. It's very important that based on the staff recommendation, all existing solar customers will continue to get the current NEM 1.0 rate and its benefits through 2030. That's part of the recommendation. Third, a new optional critical peak pricing rate that will be available in the summer of 2022. And lastly, we have a number of rate changes that include open access transmission rate updates, the already approved delay in implementation of the commercial rate restructure, in a series of minor language changes to certain tariffs and rules. The next slide, please. In regards to the solar and storage rate proposal, we are recommending no changes for existing customers with rooftop solar today and those who connect to SMUD's grid before January 1st of 2022. They can remain on the current rate through 2030. If approved, the proposed solar and storage rate is effective January 1st of 2022 for all those solar and storage customers approved for interconnection up until that time, before or on January 1st, 2022. As many of you may recall, the theme of transformational leadership that we have discussed in prior public meetings, this rate is designed to accelerate storage adoption and transform the market from solar only to solar and storage. The staff believes that the proposal benefits all our customers and help us achieve the 2030 zero carbon plan. Under the proposal, the excess power received by SMUD will be at the rate of 7.4 cents per kilowatt hour. SMUD will reevaluate this rate every 4 years, specifically in year 2026 and 2030. And the rate will not change more than plus minus a band of 30%. This provides rates predictability to our customers. Important to remember, as I said earlier, that the recommendation includes that all existing solar customers will remain on the legacy NEM 1.0 as we know it through 2030. Separate from the rate proposal, the staff will implement an interconnection fee, a one-time charge of $475 for most residential customers who connect rooftop solar to SMUD systems. This covers the cost to provide that service. The next slide, please. Thank you. And to dive a little bit more into the rate of 7.4 cents, SMUD is recognizing that the customers' excess solar, this energy avoids generating power from a power plant. And that avoids a series of costs, including carbon, greenhouse gases, natural gas, and also the capacity needed to support that power, which includes the transmission and distribution and the availability of generators. Additionally, SMUD is including in the rate the unique indirect benefit of avoiding disturbing land for utility-size solar. An independent third-party consultant helped develop this rate with the consensus from the technical working group about what components were to be included in the evaluation. The next slide, please. The other component of the rate proposal is an optional critical peak pricing rate, as we call it at this moment, critical peak pricing rate of CPP. This rate, if the proposal gets approved, will be effective in the summer of 2022. The rate builds on the successful pilot that we tested nearly 10 years ago in 2012 and 2013. The base rate will continue to be the standard time of the rate that we know today, and customers under this optional rate will pay a reduced rate on all summer off-peak and mid-peak hours with a premium during a critical peak pricing event, as we call it as of this moment. The rate is intended to encourage reduction of energy when the demand of energy is high and the grid is stressed. The rate will be for the summer months only, June through September, including weekends and holidays, in the ranges of 1 to 2 or 4 hours per event, and no more than 50 hours for the entire summer. So the prices will be reviewed regularly to adjust with market trend and posted on smud.org. The next slide, please. In addition to those rate changes, we are bringing to the board updates to our open access transmission tariff, and this slide displays the proposed prices. It's very important to know that these rates do not impact residential and commercial retail customers. The next slide, please. This part is for information only, and as the board knows, the SMUD is taking a holistic approach to support solar with the storage. And so this next section includes the solar and the storage and supporting programs we are bringing just for consideration. No rate action. These are not being included in the actual rate action. The next slide, please. We are committed to invest $25 million to support storage. The storage incentive program offers 3 levels of incentive based on the size of the storage and how that system will be used and operated. Here are more details, just as a high level on those 3 columns that you see on the slide. The first level provides incentive of up to $500, and that storage system is controlled basically by the customer. The second level in the middle, it will provide an incentive of up to $1,500, and the customer participates in the optional critical peak pricing rate that I made reference earlier. And third, this is the more, I would say, generous program. The third level provides an incentive of up to $2,500, and customers participate in the virtual power plant program as we know it as of this moment. And in addition to that, each year, SMUD will be paying a predictable amount to customers who participate in this program. So this is a high-level overview of the 3 of the 3 layers of the storage incentive program. The next slide, please. We're also very excited to bring this recommendation to the board. We are committed to bringing the benefit of solar to under-resourced multifamily dwelling communities, where they don't have the ability to install solar themselves. So this is going to be a new program that we believe is going to be available in the summer of 2022 on June 1st. Participants in this program will receive a bill credit from the on-site solar in addition to virtual solar benefits eligible customers could continue to receive the benefits that we call Energy Assistance Program rate or EPR rate discount of MED rate discount for those who have medical devices. The next slide, please. Now, that was a very high level overview of what we have been sharing with the board and the public over a number of months now. And in order to spread the word, we have done a robust public outreach process. And I'm going to touch on the very, very important items here. As I stated earlier, we conducted a very, very extensive process. This slide summarizes all of that work. Just to give you some numbers, we sent over 256,000 emails to our customers, community organizations, and leaders. We also call or email more than 1,200 community and business leaders with information on the rate proposal. We provided fact sheets and other information to more than 300 community and business partners. We also have nearly about 50 community organizations that we actually provided presentations. And finally, we share information packets and offer nearly 25 offered to meet with nearly 55 elected officials. And as we mentioned at the rate hearing 2 weeks ago, while we have had some customers express concern about this proposal, as you can see, we have had an extensive outreach process. And we did that throughout our community and across our community. And the feedback that we heard, it was mostly thank you for the information or no feedback at all, which, as Jennifer Davison, our CFO, said at the public hearing, we translate to mean that we have got about right. So the proposal is going to make everyone happy, especially one that involves a change and to our solar rate. So that is something that we believe is not going to be a balance for that for across all customers. But the fact that so few of our customers out of the 600,000 in our community during the last 2+ months of outreach cited any concerns tells us that we believe we have shaped a proposal that was not perfect, but because no compromise will be perfect, but it offers something for everyone. And most importantly, it brings benefits to all our customers. The next slide, please. Now, throughout the public process, and this is the very important part of this engagement that we have with the community, we received some alternate recommendations on a variety of items. The details of those recommendations are included in detail in the draft rate resolutions. We grouped them for the purpose of this overview into 3 categories as follows. The first group is related to the consideration of a different rate or a different structure, changes to implementation date, duration of the legacy rate for existing solar customers, and different mechanisms to pay for excess energy. In summary, after reviewing those recommendations, staff proposal is based on an independent value of solar and storage study and considerations of investment made by solar customers and the board's strategic directions on rates. The second category is not related directly to this rate action and includes a reduction of residential rates revenue due to a scalar from rates approved in prior rate actions. SMUD follows widely accepted rate-making methods. The change will reduce retail revenue and impact SMUD financial obligations. And lastly, the last group, it is related to an alternate recommendation to modify tariff language on renewable energy credits, RECs, that we call them RECs, ownership. And the proposal specifically is outside of the items that were included in the rate recommendation. So SMUD is not considering at this moment any changes to this REC or renewable energy credits treatment. The next slide, please. Basically, I already walked through a high-level view of the items included in the rate proposal, results of the public outreach, and at this moment, this is the last slide of the presentation. We are requesting the action is a discussion and approval of the draft rate resolutions introduced at the public hearing on August 31st. to make changes to SMUD's rates, rules, and regulations. There are 3 rate resolutions with attachments, 2 on the proposal from the General Manager Report and Recommendations, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and 1 on the open access transmission rate update. This concludes the staff presentation.
Great. Thank you. We've heard presentation many versions in the past few months. Appreciate another presentation. Does any of the board or staff or anybody have any questions or comments from Mr. Hernandez? Okay. I know, like I said, we've heard a lot of this through our committee meetings and such. Laura, Chief Legal Officer, have we received any public comment on number 10?
We do. We have 7 requests.
Okay, great. Are they here or were they?
I believe so. So
okay.
I
Do you
can
want to read out, like we usually do, the first 3 names to see if they're here?
John Briggs, Mohit Chabra, and Sean Frame.
So I think Jason, you're handling it. Are they all here?
I see John is here. Go ahead.
What was that? Were the 3 speakers here?
I see John. And can you please repeat the other ones for me while I pull that list up?
Mohit Chabra and Sean Frame.
So I see
Yes.
Mohit.
All 3 are here.
Okay, great. So who was the first one? John? Was it John?
Yes.
Okay, John Briggs. Jason will unmute you and you'll have 3 minutes. You can see the timer. John, are you ready? John Briggs, I see him muted. Okay.
I am ready. Do you hear me now?
Yep, we hear you now. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is John Briggs. I was a non-NEM representative on the technical working group regarding the value of solar and storage. Director Rose got me involved in this. I want to thank him for the gift that keeps on giving. I support the proposed NEM 2.0 plan now before the board. My focus has been on the unfair rate impacts of NEM 1.0. It has resulted in a significant and unsustainable cross-subsidy paid by non-NEM customers, with a disproportionate impact on low to moderate income customers. The cross-subsidy will reach $80 million annually by 2030 and continue to grow if NEM 1.0 remains in place. This is a result of 2 basic factors. First, reimbursing NEM customers at the retail rate for electrons delivered to the grid is arbitrary and unrelated to the actual value of solar. It has resulted in an unnecessary and unfair cost shifting to non-NEM customers. Second, NEM customers escape paying their fair share of SMUD's generation and distribution system. NEM customers are really not off the grid. An unavoidable feature of solar power is that it is an intermittent resource. When there are weather events and at night, solar does not generate sufficient power to meet demand. This means that ratepayers must pay for the operation and maintenance of standby power at 100% of customer load. And to the extent NEM customers receive credits at the retail rate that offset their purchases of power from the grid, the costs of standby capacity are shifted to non-NEM customers. The insidious and unavoidable consequence of NEM 1.0 is that the energy load of low to moderate income customers takes a greater share of their income. In sum, the consideration of NEM 2.0 should be driven by fundamental fairness. E3's evaluation of solar and solar plus storage is a solidly derived value. I believe that as a public entity, SMUD has a higher duty to make sure energy is delivered at a fair and sustainable price to all customers. At the same time, existing NEM customers should be protected for a reasonable period of time by continuing NEM 1.0 in recognition of their reliance on cost payback calculations, which likely influence their decision to install solar. In sum, an equitable and fair rate system is a necessity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Laura, the next speaker.
Mohit Chabra, followed by Sean Frame, followed by Alex Morris.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me speak today. I'm Mohit Chabra. I'm a senior scientist with the Natural Resources Defense Council, or the NRDC. I'd like to first start by reiterating some SMUD's 2030 goal, which is the real goal we're all working towards, is to get to zero carbon electricity cost effectively, affordably, and equitably. The question we then have to ask ourselves is, what NEM policy best fits with this goal to bring zero carbon electricity to all customers affordably? To this end, SMUD has engaged in a transparent, stakeholder-driven study, which included the industry, to figure out what a good value of rooftop solar and rooftop solar with batteries should be. Based on my experience and expertise, the study provides robust results that can be relied on. And the proposed tariff is innovative, especially like this fact that it encourages coupling solar with storage and encourages customers to not only benefit themselves, but also the electric grid. And the fact that it includes mechanisms to bring solar to residents of multifamily buildings and keeps NEM 1.0 going to honor past commitments. A couple of things for the board to think about is any subsidies for programs for a mature solar industry should now be focused on lower income customers to the extent possible. Speaks further to the equity point, and also to track solar and storage installs against what's required to meet your 2030 goals, to make sure whether you need to adjust incentives upwards or downwards, or whichever way possible, if you aren't getting enough installs. It bears reiterating and remembering that the goal really is pollution-free, carbon-free electricity by 2030, affordably and equitably. This means many things, but it also means installing the right amount of solar and paying a reasonable and fair amount for that solar. With this tariff, I think SMUD is off to the right start. I encourage you to stick with it and also be flexible based on system and customer needs going forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Next speaker, Laura.
Next speaker is Sean Frame, followed by Alex Morris, followed by Subhash Kakkar.
Good evening. My name is Sean Frame, and I'm a SMUD customer in Ward 3. And I'm calling in to discuss your change to net energy metering payments for rooftop solar. As someone who recently moved to Sacramento to care for an elderly member of our family, and as someone who's installed rooftop solar on a previous home, I had been considering installing rooftop solar on this home. However, if the net energy metering payments are reduced by an average of 40%, as they are in this proposal, would simply not pencil out, and we would not be able to take the risk. And if we can't take the risk, I have to wonder how many other people will simply stop considering rooftop solar for their homes and businesses. And here's the sad part. As a father of two sons, I know that rooftop solar is one important part of combating the climate crisis and leaving an inhabitable environment for my children and their children. It's just that as a middle-class union worker, changing the payback on the energy I generate for me and my family and my neighbors would simply make it take too long to pay back. I see that you're putting some minor incentives in for batteries, but those just simply don't make up the difference in the change in the rate when I look at what it would actually cost to install such a system. When you add in the fact that you're willing to sunset the agreed upon rate structure on your existing solar customers before the useful lifetime of these systems has expired as part of this rate change, and that you might reduce them further as much as 30% every 4 years, I'm forced to believe that I can't really trust you to honor the deals you make with us. And if I'm going to make a big commitment like this, I need to know that you're going to honor the deals that you make beyond 10 years. 10 years is not nearly long enough when you're considering something that might last as long as 20 or 25. And keep in mind, we aren't just ratepayers, we're your constituents, and we're watching. And I'd like to add that, statements like those made by Mr. Hernandez tonight, that there is widespread support and little to no opposition to this, is patently false. Hundreds of comments were made to you regarding the E3 report that underpins this proposal. And they were made in opposition of that report, pointing out flaws in that report, which are the underpinning of your assessments. Dozens of constituent ratepayers, environmentalists, and solar professionals showed up outside your offices today because we want you and the public to know what you were doing is wrong and not in keeping with your commitments outlined in your zero carbon 2030 plan. You need to do more than make great TV commercials touting your environmental commitment. You need to live up to that image. So I ask you and I urge you to follow your own goals and vote to table this change on the net energy metering rates. Go back to the drawing board and consider something that might be more equitable across the board, that might actually incent people to install the storage you say is so much a part of your plan. Do the right thing for us, for our climate, and for future generations. Thank you.
Laura, I think that was the first set of three. The next four, I guess.
Yes, Alex Morris, Subhash Kakkar, David Wright, and V. John White. So Alex Morris is next.
Hello, SMUD board. Can you hear me? My name is Alex Morris. I'm with the California Energy Storage Alliance. We represent over 100 companies involved in deploying energy storage systems where it makes sense for the electric grid to have a cleaner future for all Californians. I've been part of the very lengthy SMUD process, and it's interesting to get to the what I think is the finish line now after several years of this, and many meetings with a lot of stakeholders, including those from the solar industry, and all of us working together. And I want to say, as a grid expert, that I think the process was very fair. And anyone who's claiming that's not true, really, I don't think understands how much work has gone into this, nor how much opportunity parties had to contribute. And I've seen a lot of participation, not only from storage companies, but solar plus storage companies who all were able to participate throughout this. And I saw SMUD staff consistently work to understand and ensure that any export payments for solar, which is what net energy metering is about, properly value it in a way that is fair and reasonable and that doesn't shift costs. And I think a challenging issue here is solar can come onto the electric system in many ways, and we all support that. And SMUD's 2030 goal is truly exceptionally aggressive in terms of GHG reductions and promoting a clean energy future. One of the most aggressive in California, which is one of the most aggressive environmental states in the entire country. And to get to the finish line and to see SMUD start to recognize that, yes, there still is value to adding more solar, but there are other ways solar can be acquired, and it needs to naturally compete against that. Additionally, to see that solar plus storage starts to truly address the problems on the grid with a clean energy grid, where we have lots of solar during the day, but we don't have enough generation in the evening peak when the air conditioning ramps on. And so we need systems that solve that. And those systems can be large utility managed systems or individual customer systems. And I appreciate that SMUD is creating opportunities for the individual customer systems to play and compete in a way that will benefit SMUD ratepayers without asking them to subsidize particular business models or support that, even if it's disadvantaging lower income customers in SMUD. These are the facts, and I think it's really been a fair and excellent public process. And so for that reason, and because of the credible analysis, CISA supports this, and we look forward to moving forward in this. And I do expect there will be a lot of solar and storage deployed in this area because of our excellent weather, our relatively wealthy set of customers, and the desire for everyone to pitch in and help. Thank you for allowing me to comment today.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Next speaker, Laura.
Subhash Kakkar, followed by David Wright, followed by V. John White.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. This is Subhash Kakkar. I'm from Vedanta Society of Sacramento. I'm one of the board of directors. And I made these comments twice before, but I just want to reiterate our request to consider net meter aggregation to allow us to use ground-based solar system for Vedanta Society of Sacramento, because otherwise we had to dig a 700 feet long trench, and that is expensive and also damages the cypress trees, roots of the cypress trees on the campus. Second part that I want to present today was that I see that you are giving more discounts to people with battery storage facility. I don't quite understand the process of, I know you're encouraging people to use more storage, but for us, it is out of consideration because that will be adding too much to the cost of the solar. So we really cannot use that. So that's another factor working against us, that we won't have a battery storage possibility. So I was wondering if there's any way to subsidize the use of battery storage or allow to use, encourage us to use at least solar only. Because if we can't use solar, then we won't get that additional discount that we can't use battery storage, we won't get the additional discount that you are giving. And so I'm just confused about, why you're encouraging people to use battery storage. And in the last board meeting, I heard comments about you don't want to use people to use the electrical grid as a storage, and I didn't quite understand all that. So maybe I can talk one-on-one with someone or take this offline with someone to understand more what's going on, and especially about following up on the request we're making for net meter aggregation. Because if that is not approved, then it basically kills our proposal to have a solar system. And I know we all need to try to use more and more solar to go to your 2030 zero carbon goal. And I think we can all work together to achieve that. Thank you very much for allowing me to comment.
And, next speaker is David Wright, followed by John White.
Good evening. It's David Wright. I hope the board is all having a great evening. I haven't always seen eye to eye with the board or SMUD, but I've always tried to be fair and to be civil. And I have always hoped that SMUD would be fair with me. I do think that trust was injured at the public hearing on this rate proposal on August 31st. At that meeting, the public comment was stacked by SMUD in such a way that there was a continuous block of supportive commenters, all placed first in the lineup. Many of these commenters were organizations that work closely with SMUD, which raises questions of conflict of interest and of full disclosure of those relationships. I've written to the board about this, what I consider to be an ethically unacceptable stacking of the deck, and I provided suggestive procedures to remedy it without receiving any response. This kind of stacking has not been a unique occurrence at board meetings. We've seen this kind of stacking of favorable comments first by SMUD before, and again by organizations with a relationship with SMUD. So I would like to know that you are going to take action to fix this unfair practice, as I believe is called for per SD 12, your policy on ethics, and SD 5, your policy on customer relations. I ask for the board to communicate a procedure for its customers to be heard fairly, namely in a randomized order at board meetings, comment periods. Thanks.
Our next speaker is John White.
Good evening, and thank you for taking my comment. First of all, I want to congratulate the board and General Manager Lau for your leadership and vision in adopting your 2030 clean energy targets. I think it's a really, really important step and part of SMUD's continuing leadership. I also sympathize with the difficulties of the decision that's now before you. There are equity issues on both sides. I think one of the most important things about this proposal is that it recognizes the need to transition the solar industry from the current business model, which is entirely dependent on net metering, at a time when simply adding more solar in the middle of the day isn't in the interest or is not as valuable as it once was. So I appreciate the fact that SMUD is, at the same time that it's making this adjustment, which is going to be painful for the solar industry and cause some disruption of their current business model. Nevertheless, this is a trend that isn't going away. And in fact, we believe that SMUD's approach here is a good balance, because it recognizes that the future of solar is with storage. And yet it's also important to recognize that whatever the criticisms of the current arrangements, the solar industry and the storage component is extremely important and valuable in terms of SMUD meeting its GHG and clean energy goals while maintaining system reliability. Local solar plus storage can play an enormously valuable role in increasing reliability and grid resilience and reducing our dependence on natural gas. A couple of suggestions for strengthening the proposal. I think the board needs to commit to overseeing the implementation and potentially making adjustments in the storage incentives to be sure that this is actually occurring. Secondly, I think that with the adjustment in the compensation for net metering, that there's no reason to continue to have a size restriction. To the extent that people are going to be compensated for providing solar where it's needed, when it's needed, the size restriction doesn't make sense. And also to smooth out the business model transition for the solar industry, I don't think it would hurt anybody to extend the grandfather out to 12 and 15 years from the current proposal. But I think you have basically struck the right balance. I think there can be some improvements and a need to see what happens as we implement, but I commend you for the leadership and for the process, which I think whatever the differences that remain has been fair and inclusive and a good model for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bijan.
I believe that is all of our
right?
verbal comments. Yeah, he was the last one. We do have some written comments that we could have read into the record.
Yeah, did you want to read those?
Yes, I think we have Sally lined up to do that,
Great,
the reader.
Public comment number 1, Nancy Murray. Dear SMUD Board. Hello. I am a SMUD customer in the city of Sacramento. I own a small home and I have installed 12 solar panels on the roof. 12 are all the panels that can fit on my roof. It cost $12,000 to install the panels in 2012 and it will be many years before that investment is returned. I did not install solar panels to make a profit. I installed solar panels because I believe it is the right thing to do. Install panels on already disturbed landscapes rather than putting panels on wildlife habitat. Generate cleaner energy. Your Chief Executive Officer and General Manager report on rates and serves dated June 17, 2021, report, says several incongruous things. It says that SMUD's goal is to add 3,000 megawatts of new renewable energy and storage by 2030. Report, page 32. That is unlikely to happen in neighborhoods with smaller homes, many of which might be in disadvantaged areas. The proposal incentives storage. Report, page 32. A battery wall would have cost an amount equal to the cost of the installation of the panels themselves. It is even less likely that smaller homes, that cannot fit a large number of panels, and families that cannot afford the cost of panels and an expensive battery, will now be able to afford to install solar panels at all, because it makes less economic sense without the battery wall. So, this proposal makes it even less likely that SMUD will reach its goal to add 3,000 megawatts of new renewable energy and storage by 2030. The changes to solar power compensation is going in the wrong direction by taking away incentives to install solar panels in the first place. I encourage you not to adopt the changes to the NEM rate schedule as proposed in the report. There are very few houses in my neighborhood with solar panels now. That number will not grow if the NEM proposal in the report is adopted. Sincerely, Nancy Murray. Public comment number 2, James Simon. Honorable board members, I believe that you are making a mistake in abandoning the current reimbursement rates for home solar, and adopting the wholesale reimbursement cost model. I read the report that said that the home solar users are being subsidized by the rest of the SMUD ratepayers. This is a half-truth. SMUD chooses to set rates according to its priorities. Every time SMUD gives an incentive, be it for getting an efficient refrigerator, or the incentives for electric cars, installation incentives and discount on electric rates at certain hours, or the users that use power at peak times paying more than those at non-peak times, SMUD makes a decision to essentially tax some of its ratepayers in favor of essentially a credit for others. The time shifting of credits that the current system uses allows families to be part of the solution to our energy needs by producing electricity for all. It also shifts costs from SMUD from the capital expenditure for solar panels and their accoutrements away from SMUD to the producers. This is no small expense avoidance. The recapture of solar system homeowner expenses and capital expenditures is very long, as you are all aware. Adopting the new rate rules will dissuade many from getting new systems. It is also unfair to those customers, like myself, who used your solar calculator and saw a payback of 20 years who will instead never break even. I posit that the new rate schedule will also put the brakes on solar installations except in new homes where state law mandates it. It is SMUD's choice of how to view their incentives, as unfair costs to those who don't take advantage of them, or as tools to better society and our environment. The new solar rate structure should be rejected. Sincerely, James Simon, a SMUD customer.
I believe that's it for the written comments on this agenda item.
Okay. So that's, I'm just looking at the, okay, so it was written, we did public comments. Before we move, I want to offer comments to the group, but I did want to address one of the commenters about the order of speakers. So just so everybody knows, I mean, we try to make as many accommodations for people as possible. We set up separate lines. We accommodate people if they don't show up during the time. We also accommodate people if they've got kids that they have to go to, or they can't stay, and they really want to make a comment. And so what maybe people thought was stacking the deck was really making a lot of accommodations for people that had many other obligations, but they wanted to be sure to be put on record. I know, just as a speaker myself, when I've spoken, at the city and others, I ask if, if a SMUD board meeting or something, can I try to go at the end, which is what I ask for often because I like to be towards the end, because usually we're at a SMUD board meeting. So I want to be clear, and Laura can chime in, that it wasn't a stacking the deck. It was really trying to bend over backwards to make sure that people got in and that we didn't have to skip over them, that they could speak when they could speak. So if it appeared that things were grouped together or what have you, and yes, each one of our people who spoke talked about the relationship. So they were pretty transparent as to what the relationship was. It was no hidden that, that we were a funder and that was behind the scenes. It was all, and I think if anything, that helped show that we were trying to be as transparent as possible, because if we didn't want to, we would say, we would stack the deck in a way where it said, don't mention that we support you. So I just really wanted to be clear that, the people that spoke out, have long relationships with SMUD, and that they are proud of those relationships, and we are proud to support them, and that they came from, perspectives of their organization. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And also strategically, I know for me, lots of speakers, I like being at the end because I can hear what everybody else has said. And I noticed that people were a little bit more effective as they heard other comments. So I appreciated that. So, the comments are for the public, but they're also primarily for the board. And I don't think that I guess I'm just going to speak to me myself. I don't remember the beginning people more than the end people. And I don't weigh comments, based on the order that they came to me. People will see I'm typing a lot during the meetings. I take notes as they come. So again, I'm just one board member, but I did want to say from one board member's perspective that has been here for a while, order and where people go does not influence me as a board member or change, where I'm thinking I like to listen to all thoughts, no matter when they come or who they came from. But Laura, I'll let you add anything that maybe I've missed in terms of how we set order, how we decide who goes when or where. So.
I don't have anything to add on that aspect of it. I think you explained it well. We try to ensure that we provide opportunity for everybody to provide their input, and that we have diverse perspectives represented. I did want to actually address the notion that having community organizations speak on a rate proposal was some kind of conflict of interest because they also receive funds from SMUD. And I'll just note, as you mentioned, we're very proud of the support we provide to our community organizations. In the same way, we're proud of the support that we provided in the form of incentives to our solar customers over the past years. And so we provide financial incentive to both our customers and our community through programs and incentives. And the fact that we do that doesn't create a conflict of interest and doesn't in any way, or should not in any way, restrict us from making them aware of major decisions that may impact them going forward. And this is especially true with our most vulnerable customers, many of whom were represented by the various community organizations referenced, they're not represented by a trade association and are often unable to attend our meetings due to family and work commitments. And with respect to our board policy, SD 15 requires, in fact, that we design our communications to ensure that all groups are aware of our major decisions and programs, and we should absolutely be doing that. So I wouldn't recommend that we make any policy changes along those lines. I just wanted to respond to that because it's a pretty strong assertion to claim that there was some kind of conflict of interest going on, and I did not want that to stand on the record unchallenged. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Laura. So now, before we take a vote, a roll call, I know it's not in the script, but I'd like to open for discussion from the board. This has been a long process. So I know many of us have said what we've wanted to say, but if there are board members that would like to make final comments, I see Director Fishman up. Please do so. So Director Fishman, you're up first.
Thank you. This has been a long process. When we first started talking about changing our NEM 1.0 rate, I believe it was maybe 3.5 years ago. We have since been through an exhaustive study period with the E3 study and the value of solar. I think what they came up with is actually far more generous than it might have been. And yet, I hear, and I've spoken to a lot of people, and I've traded emails with an awful lot of constituents who are very concerned about this. And I hear that concern, I understand it. And especially from the solar industry, is really worried that their business model is changing, and that's hard. I think the changes that we're proposing are in recognition of changes that are happening regardless of what SMUD does. The solar industry is different than it was 25 years ago when net energy metering was first put into place, 22 years ago, whatever it is, 23 years ago. The cost of solar systems have come way down from roughly $30,000 to about 14, 15, maybe even less than that. So it's a 50% reduction at least. And it's no longer this nascent industry that needs to be nurtured and nurseried and babied to be successful. It is successful, and the change is happening. So, and we also look at the equity issues that where we are seeing a cross subsidy, where people who are typically at the lower end of the economic scale and can't afford solar are helping to pay for those folks who are, because we're paying 12 cents or almost 13 cents per kilowatt hour for that net energy, for that net metered energy. And then finally, the thing that I always come back to is, because the cost of solar panels has come down so far, we could now either buy or build utility scale solar for about 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And I really get it that our customers want this. They want to be able to help us. They want to be able to have solar panels on their roof. And so this is a difficult thing, because we want to support that. We want people to feel good about doing something for the environment. And yet, if we're going to pay somebody 12 cents or 13 cents for something that we could be purchasing for 3, that have the same environmental qualities, the same positive environmental qualities, whether it's utility scale or whether it's rooftop solar, I think about what else we could be doing with the difference between 12 cents and 3.5. And what we could be doing with that is incentivizing storage, which makes the rooftop systems and our utility scale solar much more effective and much more valuable, not only from a financial standpoint, but in terms of reducing carbon output, because now we can rely on that resource. That stored solar energy can be used instead of ramping up a natural gas fired plant at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a hot summer evening, when solar power is beginning to drop off and when the demand for energy is still climbing because it's hot and people are getting home and turning on their air conditioning. So there's been a lot of comment about how we're abandoning our environmental credo to some degree with this, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. We are doubling down on this environmental imperative that we reduce our carbon input. And we're doing that by saying, okay, we're going to take a little bit of that subsidy away from solar and put it into this other bucket, into this. Well, some of it's going to go to utility scale solar, and that's okay because it's less expensive. And some of those other dollars are going to go into storage, which is the next imperative. And so to me, this is doubling down on our environmental imperative. It's saying this is the next step we have to take, not only for our customers and for the equity involved and for the financial issues involved, but for the environment as well. It's not a perfect solution. Alcides mentioned that. We've heard that from a variety of people. I take V. John White's comments very seriously. He's been in this field for a long time and he gets it. And I think we absolutely, and I will make this commitment, and I believe the rest of the board will as well, but we'll let them speak for themselves. We will absolutely follow the storage industry and the number of storage systems that are being installed under our new regime, assuming we approve it tonight, and make sure that the incentives are there, that are high enough. And if they're not, we can change that programmatically. We don't have to go back through another rate process. We can do that relatively quickly. So we're going to be following that month by month, quarter by quarter, and making sure that we're seeing the results that we hope to see. And if we aren't, we can make some adjustments there. I'm gonna leave it at that. I know a lot of other board members want to say some things too. I just wanted to get it on the record that this is the right choice to make for our customers, for equity, for the environment, for our utility, and for our community. We put a lot of thought into this, and I support this effort. I think staff has done a really great job in putting this together, and certainly the stakeholder process was phenomenal. So I'm a yes vote, and I look forward to hearing from my fellow board members.
Okay. Like I said, I know we've all said a lot of things, and Director Fishman says all the things that we wanted to say typically. So I'm glad that he went first.
That's why I like to go first.
Yes. So did anybody have any additional comments above the great comments that Director Fishman laid out for all of us? Hey, Director Sanborn.
Thank you very much, President Bowie Thompson. Lower the hand. I just want to say I got some emails from some customers today. And I just want to revisit who I am, because it was a little shocking to hear that people don't think, that we get how serious the climate problem is out of everybody in this utility business. I'm an early solar adopter. I was one of the first solar customers that SMUD had. SMUD installed my system, and I wanted more solar panels when it was installed. I just sold that house. My husband and I just moved recently, and we plan on putting it on this house, and we're going all electric here. And I'm familiar with the IPCC report that we're in a code red for humanity. And the NOAA just announced that July was the hottest month on record ever. It's not lost on us how serious this climate crisis is. That is why we led with the 2030 zero carbon goal. It's not net zero, it's zero. And I actually agree with some of you that the E3 report, while very good on many levels, it's following utility protocol on how they calculate methane. I personally disagree with it. I think if we buy the gas, everything that led to that gas getting to us is our responsibility, and all the methane released is our responsibility. That's not how the utility industry calculates it. So we would be at a disadvantage with other utilities if we did it differently. But that's okay. We're trying to get to zero anyway. So, it is what it is. But I want to say this, that I really do believe that we need PV and storage as quickly as possible. We've got a drought, a super drought. We are losing hydro because of it. And we need that, as several people have spoken to, we need to have grid resiliency. And the way to have it is not have all the power from renewables come at the exact same time without the ability to store it. We have to be able to store it. And so we have the virtual power plant in this plan. I personally believe that we should increase our cap on how much PV is allowed on home, because I know that I wanted to put more on when we were doing it. And I still think, especially if we're trying to get to 2030, I want to be able to see people get as much solar as they want to pay for, because the chances are, if they're not getting an electric car tomorrow, the people in 7 years, because houses turn over every 7 years, if we're going all electric, then that means that house is going to need that solar during the life of the, by 2030 at least. And I'd like to see the subsidies for batteries go up, especially for folks that are at low income, so that they can afford it, or maybe, reduce the cost or eliminate the cost to connect for those folks, or financing help, because we know these are very expensive systems to anybody. And I would like to see businesses have more time to adjust. I've always said, I work in doing legislation, and I just negotiated several bills, and we negotiated with industry that they had 18 months to adjust to some of the changes. So 3 months, 4 months, that is a very short period of time. But this discussion has been going on for years, and other people are paying the price by not having this decision get made. So we're in a tough spot. And I just want to say that, to close, that I strongly agree with what V. John White said. I would like to see us as a board really overseeing this and watching very carefully. I would ask our CEO, Paul Lau, to please keep us updated monthly, if hopefully monthly is what I would prefer, to know how many more solar systems and batteries are being sold and installed, so we can keep our fingers on the pulse of what's happening here, because it really is a guessing game as to how it's all going to be impacted. And we do need these systems quickly. And we need to track this and oversee it. So I just want to thank everybody. If CEO Lau thought it would be okay to go a few more months to give the industry some time to adjust, I would be good with that. I'm not sure everybody is, but I would like to see in the future that we give our businesses more time to adjust from the time of our final decision. So that is public, and I'm saying that out loud. So thank you again. And again, to the staff, amazing work. Really good job overall. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Director Herbert.
Thank you, President Bowie Thompson. You know, I first of all want to thank everybody who has taken the time to send me an email or called me on the phone to tell me what they think about this proposal. You know, I've had some great discussions via email, and I have had my eyes open to some things I hadn't seen before. So I want to say first and foremost, I appreciate that. You know, for me, this really comes down to fairness, and it comes down to choice, and it comes down to balance. I mean, I tell you, I got an email from one of my constituents saying, hey, let's just get green energy, renewable energy, pay the lowest cost, and we'll all be better off for it. Then I've gotten emails from others saying, you're trying to kill the solar industry. We'll no longer be able to get anybody to put solar on their rooftops with this kind of decrease in the price that you're paying. And you know, I personally feel like our staff has done a great job of finding the balance. You know, I think V. John White did say it best when he said that you struck the right balance, SMUD. The truth is, this is painful for everybody. I mean it. I mean, I would love to extend things. I would love to have, you know, a scaling down. You know, I would love to delay this for a while longer. But our staff has been real clear with us. They were clear with us 2 years ago when they said that there's a huge subsidy that is being created. And I think that the research that was done by E3 was fair and balanced. So, you know, I also saw letters today from our friends, you know, who are in underserved communities, who said, don't forget us. Folks from Black and Brown communities who've said, hey, we don't want to have to subsidize somebody else. We want everybody to pay their fair share. And so, you know, I've listened to everybody and I've read lots of things. And where I come down is that I think it's very important for us to encourage solar and battery, no longer just solar. It must be solar and battery. That's why I love that we've put more money into the battery incentives. And quite frankly, I feel that we need to put even more in. And so I would be one of those people who will be tracking to see how the solar installations go. On the other hand, I don't feel that we can continue to pay 4 times what the price is in the market. And even some say, well, 7.4 cents is like twice as much. That's okay for me because I want to have a balanced portfolio of solar that is rooftop residential, that is commercial, that is also, you know, out in the neighborhoods. That's at Rancho Seco. I mean, there's a whole variety of solar that I want to encourage. And so if it is 7.4 cents for residential solar, it's, to me, I'm willing to pay that extra, even though some of my constituents don't feel that I should do that. In the end, I do feel like we're just embarking on this journey. You know, this board set our moonshot that we are going to be zero carbon by 2030. And quite frankly, this is like the second, step in that direction. And we do have the ability to adjust or to pivot if we need to. We look at our rates every 2 years. So I, for one, I'm comfortable with this rate proposal. I think it really was threading the needle. I am very happy that some of our longtime friends who we respect in the utility industry have said this is an innovative proposal, rate proposal. So I just want to say that I think staff has done their job. And I feel as a board member, my job is to do something that is fair and balanced for all of our customers. So I will be supporting this also.
Great. We have Dr. Tamayo.
Yes, thank you, and I apologize for not having my my camera on. I have some bandwidth issues. So, last year we passed our climate emergency declaration, and earlier this year we approved our 2030 zero carbon plan. And I and the rest of the board and our staff and our CEO are entirely committed to meeting that goal. And to do that, we have to make some tough choices. We do need to reduce the subsidy that's being provided to rooftop solar customers, because it served its purpose, but now the market is, even though they're asserting that they can't get by without it, the cost of installing those is much lower than it used to be. And it's time for us to focus on what we need to do for the future. And I think that ongoing support of rooftop solar only provides so much less value to our customers and our system, and for reducing carbon, that it's just not justifiable to continue it. And that our new priorities need to be, how do we use solar energy more effectively? And so I understand that every dollar that we put into supporting rooftop only takes away from many other things that we have to do to reach our 2030 zero carbon goal. So every single dollar that goes into that provides less value than we could get by getting more utility scale solar, more support for batteries, more support for low income families that need help in better weatherizing their homes or having better access to electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging, less money for upgrading our grid. So I think it's really important that we start thinking forward and investing in the things that are really going to get us where we need to go. Now, that being said, I am concerned with the effect of this on the rooftop solar industry. I would prefer to invest in supporting the batteries plus rooftop solar because we need them to install that. I don't mean that we do blank check, but I do think that we need to keep an eye on how well our battery incentives are working to overcome the relative, not quite inexpensive enough cost of the batteries at this point, and we fully expect that it's going to change over the next couple of years. But I think there is value to supporting that early so that we, as a community, get the resiliency benefits and the carbon benefits of having more battery storage sooner rather than later. So I'm fully committed to supporting programs that take the money that we save from the from the solar only subsidy and repurposing that so that we get more bang for our buck. I am concerned about the timing of it. I think that, even though we've known that this is coming, and industry and the community have known this is coming, the final decision being made in September and then becoming effective really 3 months later, I think is too abrupt. I don't think in the future we should have such a sharp drop off. If I thought that there were the votes to support it, I would support a longer ramp down, perhaps another 6 months. So I'm just stating my position on that. The other things that I'm hoping that we will support in the future that are, would be looking into adjusting the cap for rooftop solar. I really do think that if people are putting in, oversizing it, I think that we can adjust the tariffs for that to accommodate for additional generations so that, it's not being put into, anyway, I think that I'd like to see us look at adjusting the cap on the capacity of rooftop solar that we're allowing, because I do think that there's a good chance that we'll need that additional capacity in the future as we electrify. And I would like staff to look into, can we figure out a way to support VNEM for multifamily housing, whether it's affordable or not, because there are quite a few people who would like to have access to solar, who wouldn't have it otherwise. And I'd like to see if that we can develop a rate or program that would make that possible and greatly expand the availability of VNEM. So I do plan to vote for this, and I think it's a really important thing for us to do to achieve more fairness for the community and to continue to accelerate our reduction of carbon emissions. Thank you.
Okay, Vice President Rose.
Sure. Thank you, President Bowie Thompson. Actually, I have some notes written, but I sent an email earlier today, so I think I'm largely going to read that to be sort of more succinct. So I plan on voting for the proposal tonight, and I wanted to explain why. One, I think that the proposal is a good long-term strategy that will allow rooftop solar to keep growing without unduly impacting all customers. I also think it helps meet our critical carbon goals. I also want to point out that this plan does not have a grid access charge, and I think it's clear that that's the right way to go. There's also this idea of self-consumption and storage, and I think that's really key as the grid gets more and more solar every day, giving people the incentive to use the energy as it's being generated makes financial and environmental sense. So if your system's producing in the middle of the day, that's when you should be running your appliances, as opposed to using the grid as a battery, essentially. I'm definitely concerned about the short-term bridge to this new policy, and how to de-risk that transition. I worry about our small local businesses. And that's the reason why I abstained from the vote on approving these resolutions a couple of weeks ago. But this is the crux of it. The scenarios I see is if I vote against the proposal, then it indicates that I don't think the overall plan is sound and that I don't approve of the very small rate increase. But if I vote for the proposal, then it indicates I approve of everything in it and that I have no concerns. And so it is definitely a catch-22 there. And I know that in policymaking, there's often no solution that can please everyone. But I also have learned, this definitely during some of our IRP work, that the perfect shouldn't be the enemy of the good in this case. I also know that, the industry has deep financial interests and that any change to these policies is being opposed. The value reduction in this plan is somewhere between, say, 12 and 25% reduction. Depends on a lot of assumptions, and I talked about those previously. But for me, that reduction that we've been talking about for a long time, that's not going to kill the solar industry, which is what we've been hearing in the emails that we've been receiving. And I'm also aware, there's a lot of these private financial interests benefit from a delay in these changes. And then the longer it gets delayed, the better for them. And they strategize around that idea. And so we've been hearing about this idea of we're going to start with a blank piece of paper after 2 to 3 years of work. So anyway, I believe it's really fundamentally the right direction to move in. I think we need to carefully monitor how this progresses over the next 6 months to a year. I'm definitely supportive of Director Sanborn and the others who'd like to see ongoing monitoring. I think either every month, maybe 2 months is good enough to hear an update. I know if you do it, every month, you can often sort of lose granularity. Is just 1 month is high and 1 month is low. But I also know that we've talked about tonight that the program has the flexibility, that it has the adaptive management built into it that will allow it to be successful. And I know ultimately voting against the policy will undercut the whole thing, which I don't want to do. And so for me, I worked in and around the solar industry since 2004. And so I'm completely committed to ensuring a functioning local solar business. And I know that the staff is as well. But I also know that, business, they compete against each other. And so you need to allow businesses to function and not necessarily support winners and losers. So anyway, so those are just some short summary. I know I've said a lot over the past couple of years. I'm not going to restate any of all that I have. So those are my thoughts. I also want to just note, SMUD, we've been on a solar buying spree, and we've bought or installed about 500 megawatts of solar in the last couple of years. And you compare that to our peak demand of 3,000 megawatts. I mean, we're buying solar left and right, and that's not going to stop. So we definitely are completely committed to this transition to carbon. So those are my thoughts. And I certainly would be open to any changes if anybody else wants to do that. But I sort of swung at that and missed last time. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comment? Okay. Okay. Oh, Greg, Director Fisher.
Thank you. Let me just ask the question, because this is something that came up in one of my conversations with people in the solar industry, and maybe Jennifer or Paul or somebody can respond to this. I believe that our current language says that applications that are approved by SMUD by the end of this year will fall under the current net energy metering rate. And the suggestion was made that we change that one word from approved by SMUD to applications that are submitted to SMUD by the end of the year. And so my question is, one, in general, what is your reaction to that? It would allow for more systems to come in under the old rate, sort of extending the glide path just a little bit. But I guess my other question is that a large enough change at this point that it would trigger a delay in the process where we would have to go back out and accept more public comment on that change?
Thank you, Director Fishman. I guess I'll take that answer. I mean, I'll answer that question. So if we're just changing the word from approved by SMUD, which is the normal verbiage, to submitted, that will not trigger a delay on the vote itself. So that's a simple amendment that we'll actually do in the language itself. That's more of an administrative procedural piece, as part of the rate piece. So if that's the desire of the board to change the verbiage from approved to submitted, that's something that we can accommodate within this process itself.
Well, and then Paul, let me follow up with a question. I mean, I understand what that's going to do. It's going to create an Oklahoma land rush to get applications submitted, yes. many of which will probably not actually be viable for whatever reason. People won't follow through. It's going to create an awful lot of work for us, much of which will be for naught.
Correct.
What's your response to that?
So my guess would be that will probably happen to a certain degree. So because of the fact that, I mean, people will be saying that, well, this new rate's going to get in place, right? So if you want to reserve it, I would recommend you sign a contract and reserve it and see what happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't happen. So my guess would be is that probably will happen to a certain degree, but I don't know to what extent that will happen.
Well, and my other concern about that is that, I personally hate to be on that car lot saying, well, what's it going to take for you to drive this home today? I don't like that kind of high pressure sales, and I worry that it will engender much of that to a bunch of our customers that might not take well to it. So
Director Fishman, I think that's really the reasons why we said it's approved. That means it's pretty serious. I mean, you've actually thought it all the way through. You've gotten the calculations, and you're really ready to commit to put in the process itself versus just submitting an application. That was the logic why staff did what we did, is to precisely to prevent basically spending a lot of staff time that may not really somebody putting a system in. And number two is that we don't know what the customer experience would be, if they submitted it, and it didn't work out, and how would that play from a customer perspective? And that's really the logic why we recommended the verbiage the way we did.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense and resonates. I do sympathize with the industry, and would be willing to entertain some option that gives them a little bit more of a cushion. But I don't believe that language change is probably the best one.
I agree. Director Kurth?
Thanks. I just wanted to chime in and agree with as that was explained. December 31st, we could get 1,000 applications in with no meat at all, just addresses and applications. Who knows if any of those are real? Who knows whatever happens to them? It creates, I think, a very wrong notion. And let's not forget that the more people we let in under the old system, the more people we push into poverty. Because every time we pay out this money to somebody above what it costs to get this solar energy that we need, we're raising someone's bill. And so somewhere out there, there's a person who can't pay their bill anymore because we've decided to extend a deadline to let a few more people get in under the now 20-year-old system. And so it's always tough in public life to remember to listen to the people who aren't in the room. And so this is money that we're taking from one group of people and giving to another group of people. And so let's be very, very careful that we get the best deal that we can get, and that we're doing it in everyone's best interest, not, to help out a few folks who are organized and loud. Thanks.
Okay. I think we've heard, Director Rose.
Yeah, I want to touch on one other thing about the stacking of the public comment at the last meeting. I know it's definitely a strategy when you are running a meeting to have your pros and cons grouped together. Typically, you give us that time frame and you let it be known beforehand. And so, if we're going to organize in the future, let's please make sure that it's at least stated we're doing this and we're doing it. We're doing it on purpose. I mean, the order makes no difference to me in how I listen or take in testimony or judge testimony, but it does give a bad look, and there's just no reason.
Brandon, I wanted to pause. So there was no stacking of pros. It was people who requested to go early. So those people that requested to go early were pro people, but that we didn't do that on purpose. So I just want to be clear.
I'm sure there's people listening who would be happy to actually chart out that, because it was like 50 minutes of all pro.
Well,
right?
because I received the request and forwarded it on, I know where the request came from, Brandon. So a lot of, we receive requests from people. They happen to all be on the pro side. I saw the emails, I saw the texts. So it wasn't that we said, hey, all you pro people bunched together. They just had time commitments and we moved them ahead as we could. So I just want to be clear on that, because I was a personal recipient of those requests for some of them, not all of them. So I don't know who else got requests, but I know the 3 that were bunched together, I saw those requests come in, and it had nothing to do about being a pro person. It was, I have a child to pick up, I have another meeting, I have a board meeting. So I want that to be clear, because I know the people who asked that were accommodated. So Director Carr.
Yeah, a wily mayor once told me you always want the opponents to go first anyway, because then the board will likely forget what they said by the time all the happy people get done talking. So I don't think there was any stacking going on there at all. It's just the way it worked.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't want to say that I said, but we tried to accommodate the people who had other obligations. So if the solar people had said, I have to get out by 5:45 or what have you, we would have done our best. We didn't actually accommodate everybody who did message me. We weren't able to, so they had to unfortunately stick around. So I just, I got some late requests saying I'm way back in the queue, and I said, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to wait. So when we could, we did it. So I just wanted to be clear that it wasn't purposeful. It was, people had places to be. So, okay. So any more comments on that order or what have you? But yes, I mean, I don't have a lot more to add, except, again, this has been a long process. We all have listened. We've all received emails. We've all taken to heart the comments. But as I've said, this is my 13th, 14th year on the board. I speak for those who can't come to a meeting, who don't have the technology to call in, that work 3 jobs, that can't organize through an association to know when these meetings are. And so I will continue to speak for those people that don't have a voice. I continue to speak for my family that lives in Oak Park, 8 people to a very small home, that it's hard. And as I make decisions on the board, I have to look, unfortunately, at the pot of money that we have is not unlimited. And as we compare costs, as much as I would love to continue to subsidize industries that need assistance, that's part of SMUD's role, is that we help support industries. And as we see that they're sustainable, we look at other ways of using our funds more effectively. And unfortunately, our role is not to prop up industries indefinitely. Our role is not to continually subsidize industries, but it's really to help and to be part of entrepreneurial spirit, and to assist when that assistance is needed. And so as I look forward, these decisions that we have to make to get to 2030 will be hard. I will try to fight for all, but I have to fight for SMUD and keeping our rates low. And that's going to be my top priority, because a $5 rate increase is an incredible impact. I'm in a situation now, just personally trying to find, I take care of my mother, trying to find a place for her right now. It's not cheap. Trying to find an assisted living position for her is hard, and I have means, right? And I can't imagine others who are struggling to take care of their mothers like I am that don't have that means. And so I will continue to listen and appreciate all those have come. So I do thank you, all the emails. I can't reply to all of them. As people know, I have 3 jobs, but I do read all of them and I appreciate them. As we move forward, I have listened, and so I did not think I would have a rate change or rate proposal, but I am inclined to do one tonight. So I'm sorry, my fellow board members, I did not give any of you a heads up, but as I've listened to the speakers today and our board members, I would like to request from our general manager one alternative, which is to keep all the rates and structures in place, but to allow a larger grace period. So I would like to propose that this rate structure starts on March 1st, which will allow us to get through the holidays, right? The holidays are very busy, and trying to get solar in during that time is going to be very difficult. But if we can give an extra 2 months, I don't think it's going to kill us, but I'm going to cross my fingers. I'm going to ask our CEO, Paul and Jennifer, to see if an additional 2-month extension would not break the bank, shall we say.
President Willie Thompson. So certainly I have also listened to, gotten a lot of emails from the industry. So I certainly understand that what Director Sanborn and Director Tamayo and all the board members talk about, the concern about, yes, even though we've been having this conversation, all this collaboration process with the solar industry for 2 years. I feel for them that, they're worried that this is a disruption to their, to their business model. And, because of the fact that we are reducing the export rate. Remember, part of this proposal was that we did not touch any of the self-consumption. And, the net energy metering was created to, so you generate for self-use and was not to become an independent power producer. And so the proposal just touches the export rate, but certainly I understand that does impact the business model. And I know by extending 2 months, it's probably another $2 million of going through 2030, but it's something that we can probably accommodate within, without rate proposal itself, without delaying it for another vote.
Okay, Director Kurth.
Here, thank you. So could you explain a little more how much this would cost? You think it'll be $2 million a year for 10 years?
So maybe Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is actually $2 million more till 2030 if you actually extend it.
That is correct.
So if I do my math in my head, it's probably another $250,000 a year.
Okay, so then the question, folks, is do we really want to spend $2 million to allow solar companies to get a few more sales in during January and February?
Director Herbert has your hand up.
Yes, thank you, President Bowie Thompson. I'm really concerned about us extending the deadline, to be honest with you. This has already been stretched out almost 2 years. And it is true that our low-income folks are carrying the solar folks because of this subsidy. And it's been talked about for a lot of meetings. And, when we talk about underserved communities and how a $5 rate increase can really have an impact on their families and their life, I can't stand back and say, okay, 3 more months of this strong subsidy. I think SMUD has really been generous. I think we've bent over backwards, and I think it's unfair to our communities of color and to other communities that are paying for this. So I, for one, I cannot support the extension of the subsidy for 3 more months. We have already, I think, landed on a generous subsidy, and I'm looking for something that's fair and balanced, and I feel that that this puts things out of balance. So those are my comments.
Thank you. And just so you know, it's not for 3 months, it's for 2, but yeah. But Director Fishman?
Yeah, I'm torn because everything that we've just heard on both sides of that question is true. In the long run, I mean, yes, we've got to worry about our low-income customers, and as Director Bowie Thompson said, the people who are not in the room and the people who are not ever going to be in the room to have their voice heard, and a lot of people that frankly are living paycheck to paycheck and just don't have the time to be interested in things that affect them in this way. By the same token, we've also got a lot of solar companies that are out there employing hardworking folks that are trying to make a living and are seriously worried about the impact that this might have on their business. And if 2 more months gives them a little bit more of a cushion, I'm willing to support that. Paul, I do want to make sure that I understand. You said this would cost about $2 million over the course of the next 9 months, or 9 years rather, not per year.
Not per year, yes. It's
Okay.
it's probably about 250,000 per year, in that range, depends. So correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, I think that's the calculation I looked at.
That is correct, Paul.
Okay. I would be willing to extend it for 2 months and give the solar industry that much more time to rework their marketing campaigns, frankly, and to really understand what it is that we're doing and how that they can start that transition to solar plus storage a little bit more effectively. I'm okay with it.
Director Tamayo?
Yes, wow. My apologies. Yeah, I think it's a reasonable accommodation. I like the rest of us, I'm concerned about the effect that this has on our rates and our ability to do other things. But I do think it's a reasonable accommodation for the industry that has expressed that they need to be here to help install the batteries plus solar. And I think that giving them a little bit more time to make that transition will help smooth it out and take some of the sting off of it, and actually for us to have more time to work with them to make sure that our program is something that works for them. So I appreciate the proposal by President Bowie Thompson, and I'm willing to vote for that. Was that an actual motion, or we're just talking about the concept, President?
I was just talking about the concept. And then, I mean, I can count heads. I'm happy to propose it, but I'll let Director Sanborn speak.
President Bowie Thompson, I appreciate you making that, throwing out that idea. I very much support it. As I said, in the future, I hope that we can work on processes so that we don't put ourselves in the position again where we're having to make a decision and then things get changed in just 4 months or 3.5 months. For businesses, that's almost no time at all, especially with 2 big holidays usually, or the holiday season at the end of the year. So I would support it. And I know this is costing us a bit of money. And I know that we really do have to think about too, how we're going to help our communities that need it the most to get access to batteries plus storage. That financing system and increasing subsidies are reducing to zero, for example, the charge to get onto the grid for them to have these systems. I really would like us to look at that. And I know our CEO is empowered with a lot of those decisions. So with that, I support this idea, and thank you for putting it forward.
Thanks. And Director Herbert, before you speak, I wanted to just make a personal comment. Yes, many people in the industry have known that this is coming for a while, but I can just say normal run of the, my friends that are pretty, you would think, plugged in. When I've talked to them, they're like, what? You're going to change rates. So even though we've done a ton of marketing and outreach, people that are in my life, which I think I've talked about this previously, they're so busy with their things. And I think it's been kicked down the can so long that people just haven't come to realize. And when I was at a vaccine clinic and said, no, it's coming, the look of shock, and I go, and I have talked to you about this. So I just wanted to say that as much as we know it's been a painful, long process, I don't know if all of our customers really know that it's going to be here. And I don't know that it's really been, sinking into people. And once we make this decision, it will be. And like I said, I'm just trying to protect all people here and offer a little bit of an olive branch, a little bit of a leeway. It does take a while to process paperwork and site and get financing. And at the end of the year, I know I'm very busy during the holidays. So I've never been a fan of 1-1 go lives for technology. And I've always appreciated when people have pushed out go lives not on January 1st. So I'll let Director Herbert say her comments.
Thank you, President Bowie Thompson. And I guess I just want to say a couple of things. One is that I thought it was $2 million a year. Yeah. So I thought we were looking at 20. Yeah. Oh. Okay. So, I mean, if we're looking at $170,000 a year, that is, to me, that is very much worth giving more time for folks to get used to this. I do think we've had a lot of meetings and discussions, but I think that you're right that sometimes it does take a while to get the word out. In fact, over the weekend, I was visiting with two friends who said, well, I want to get solar. And it's like, good, come on, get signed up. And I think you're right. They would run into the same thing of, Christmas, the holidays. So I think for the sake of the businesses, that this extra time is a good thing, and it's not going to cost $20 million. It's only going to be $2 million. So that is I think that's a reasonable compromise, and I appreciate folks explaining it more clearly to me.
Okay. So it sounds like it's agreeable. So. Jennifer, Laura, and Paul, I would like to submit an amendment so I'll make a proposal. I didn't think I would do it this time. I think this is my 5th one. So I propose to accept A and B with the alternate start date of March 1st, 2022. I don't want to read everything, but is that acceptable? Laura, Paul?
Yes, I think what you're making a motion to approve discussion calendar 10 with the amendment that the solar and storage rate resolution will be modified to reflect an effective date of March 1st, 2022.
Yep. Okay.
That's the motion.
That is the amendment to the original proposal. Can I have a director?
So moved.
Second my proposal?
Second.
Yes, right, because I moved it, right, Laura? So somebody had to second me, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
So great. And then, so Chief Legal Officer, can you please conduct the roll call?
Director Rose,
Aye.
Director Fishman,
Aye.
Director Herbert,
Aye.
Director Kurth,
Aye.
Director Tamayo,
Yes.
Director Sanborn,
Aye.
President Bowie Thompson.
Yes.
Discussion calendar 10 as amended is approved.
Well, great, thank you. I know that was not easy to those in the solar industry. I still see some of the names here. I wish we could have, done more, but this is what we have today. So we tried our best, right, to make all parties as whole as possible. So our next item is public comment items not on the agenda. At this time, we allow public comment on items not on the agenda, but within our jurisdiction. In accordance with our emergency board meeting procedures, written public comment on items not on the agenda will be provided to the board electronically and will be placed into the record of the meeting if it's received within 2 hours after the meeting ends. Chief Legal Officer, have we received any requests to speak on items not on the agenda this evening?
We did receive a request by David Wright, but I understand that he's left the meeting. So with that, there's been no request. We do have some written comments that we'll put into the record.
Okay, because I see David Wright's name in Zoom. Is he gone? I see his name.
Yeah, we still show him as on.
Well, if he's on.
Mr. Wright, did you want to speak? Do you want to turn him on, Jason?
Yes, we'll turn him on now.
I was like, I see him in my attendee list. Mr. Wright, are you still here?
So we're having a difficult problem. We have some of the clients that are a little out of whack. So this one's, we have to promote. So one of the speakers earlier, we had to promote. That's why you saw his video. We're having the same problem where we could ask him to either call our toll-free number and be on the phone, or we can try and promote him like we did the other speaker.
Okay.
Are you guys fine with promoting?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't think he's going to flash us, hopefully. If not, you can have your button, your finger on the button to disconnect him if he plans to streak. Okay. So, but Dave has his hand up. Did you want to say something before Mr. Wright spoke?
I just wanted to clarify when we took the vote, I thought that we were voting on the amendment. Were we voting on the entire resolution?
Yes, that was the whole thing.
Okay. Well, it doesn't change my yes vote. But...
Okay, but that was it. It was quick and fast.
Okay. All right.
All in one. So yes, Jason, if you could just be prepared if he does, anything. But yeah, I trust that Mr. Wright will act professionally if he's prepared.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright, are you ready?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you for promoting me. I will try not to do anything untoward.
You're clothed, so that's good.
Yes. I thank you for addressing my comment earlier. I don't feel that you have completely settled the question. I worry that there is the potential for this kind of stacking or soliciting of favorable comments, and I feel that the board should establish written protocols, written ethics to prevent even the appearance. This is the common thing in ethical standards, prevent even the appearance of bias. So, having 7 or 8 favorable commenters at the beginning of a series of public comments gives the appearance of non-randomness and of bias. And I believe that you should establish a protocol that no one in SMUD should solicit favorable or unfavorable. It should solicit comments from people that they feel, might favor SMUD's position. And 2, that presentations that are known to the board or to the staff before the meeting at some suitable interval, maybe an hour, that those are randomized in order of presentation. So I think that SMUD needs these kinds of protocols, written protocols implemented to prevent the appearance of bias in public comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments.